We interrupt this program for a special news bulletin.
Throws toward the corner of the end zone. It is intercepted! Intercepted! The Ducks have the ball!
To the end zone! Taking the ball, Oregon! Mariota dives! Touchdown! They hand it off straight on! C.J. Verdell wins the game for Oregon!
Inside the 10! A hat-trick, a touchdown from Justin Herbert! Howard's gonna run for it. Time runs out, and that'll do it! Welcome to the Big Ten, Oregon! They storm the field at Autzen!
All right, Duck fans, here we go. Welcome into another bonus episode of the Ducks Rising podcast, sponsored by Backer. I'm Zachary, Neel, my co-host over there, Travis Rooke-Ley. Today, we are super excited to be joined by both Todd and Quinn Van Horne, part of Horne Brands, two of the minds behind Oregon's uniforms and just about everything you see around the Oregon facilities. Todd, Quinn, thank you guys for joining us. How are you doing today?
We're doing great. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. It's super fun. Ducks Rising podcast, one of our favorites. So it's an honor to be part of the show. And so thank you for the showcase to be able to tell the story.
Absolutely.
I'm just from Zach and myself, obviously, just a big thank you to you guys. I know this is a day that has been long in the works. And so taking some time out of your day to join us is obviously much appreciated by ourselves and the fan base. Todd, just for you, can you go back a little bit for us and for fans that are maybe unfamiliar with your work, like talk about your history with Oregon, how you got involved, and ultimately like how that resulted in Horne Brands being built? Yeah. Wow, we're going to go way back machine here. So it's just I started working for Nike in 1990, so it was about that time. In the mid parts of the 90s, we had the opportunity to redesign the Denver Broncos uniform. So back in that time, the John Elway era, and design the logo and design the uniform. And I think it was right after that time that the Ducks went to a Rose Bowl, and the excitement around it at Nike, and certainly with the founders and very much Duck alumni at the Nike campus is, whoa, hey, you guys are pretty good at uniforms. You did this for the Denver Broncos. Why don't you do this for the Oregon Ducks? So that kind of started the ball rolling, where we redesigned and good teamwork at the Nike campus, bringing innovation into uniforms that launched the O and launched the uniform back in 1999. And so it was that kind of era that I've been part of the redesign and uniform process and branding process, with Nike through that time up until 2020 when I retired from Nike, and then just kept still having fun with the Oregon brand, and they kept saying, hey, continue to do this work, and we said, well, why not? So we developed Horne Brands, and here we are today. So still having fun, still focusing all our efforts on University of Oregon, and it's a great ride.
And Quinn, where did you come along in that story? I know you started doing this from a young age. We talked before about loving uniforms, but what is your part in that story?
Oh yeah, I was involved when I could walk, basically, when I could articulate.
Can I say this is true? He would go up to kids in the playground and say, "Do you root for the Beavers or the Ducks?" And then that would determine who he wanted to play with.
I was very selective at the age, as you can tell. I have many friends who are Beavers now, but I have a lot better friends who are Ducks. But one of obviously, growing up with, hearing so much about the uniforms and kind of growing up as kind of a Nike kid, you get involved with so many of those processes so young. And, for me, I just fell in love with Ducks football, probably like so many kids, I remember very distinctly the 2008 Oregon State game with Jeremiah Johnson running down the sideline, Oregon keeping Oregon State out of the Rose Bowl at that time, as that being a really foundational moment that was like, whoa, okay, I really like this Ducks football. I really like University of Oregon. And then that led to a whole nother level of, obviously, 2009 was an amazing ride for Oregon football, going to the Rose Bowl. But all of those things for me, I've been following along for so long, and obviously being able to have your dad in the house that's designing the uniforms, I got to go into some of the Nike meetings that are helping decide what the scripting was for each game, helping talk about, okay, what should the names be for these certain things. So I was kind of involved in that from such an early age. And then I thought I really wanted to work in college athletics for a really long time. I did a marketing internship at University of Oregon with the athletic department. Went down and took a job in Arizona for a little bit of time. Eventually just kind of found my way back to Oregon, and it was this, okay, we have a moment, we have an opportunity to do something special, and me kind of finding out this is what I wanted to do all along. This is really what I wanted to put my teeth into, and then being able to dive into these projects, working on the Generation O uniform redesign. Obviously, we're working on 2.0 right now. All of those pieces kind of combined all of my experience. It feels natural. It doesn't feel like a taught talent. It just feels like I've just kind of picked it up from so many over the years. But it's really cool when you have your hero that can't ignore my phone calls without a doubt.
Very true. Yeah, I can't imagine it. I mean, it's got to be incredible doing what you guys love to do and also just being able to do it, with your dad and with your son. That's got to be something really special. What brings us here today, obviously, is the Shoe Duck uniforms that were released earlier today. Incredible. Like, we talked about it a little bit before we started recording, like, easily my favorite uniforms that I've seen, and, I'm very opinionated on this topic, as we've discussed before. You guys put your heart and soul into every uniform you design. It's clear that, everyone involved cares a lot about this. But the Shoe Duck uniforms feel elevated. The thank you to Phil and Penny Knight, the details, the tiny little Easter eggs in there. It's incredible. How special was this process for you guys to work on this for, like you said, 3 years? Just how special a process was that?
That's really hard to put into words. I mean, I don't know that there's perfect words to put it, because it's working for Nike for 30 years, coming, and knowing the Knights and knowing what it means to them and knowing how you can say thank you and give the flowers to the living. Just really, talk about how much they've inspired us and inspired not just us as a family. Obviously, it's it's very personal to us as a family, but just you see it around Oregon, you see it around the whole state, and what they give back. It's just and you read Shoe Dog and the trials and tribulations about everything they put into this, and that they continue to give back to Oregon and continue to give back to University of Oregon and to the Knight Cancer Institute. I mean, it's just it truly is an honor to be able to tell this story, and just that whole idea is like, I don't know. I just loved our initial conversations with players. It's like, well, what would a love letter to the Knights look like? How do you say thank you? And that's where sort of this Dear Phil, sort of story and where it came from, and all those things. It becomes very personal and very emotional, and I think that's what makes it so powerful.
Yeah, and Michael Bishop did an amazing job writing that Dear Phil video. Brian McAndrew was the one who did our original edit. Two of the I Love My Ducks guys, so it's fun to kind of have them be full circle into this moment as well. But just so emotional and so impactful in that way. And we really wanted this to make it feel truly a gift from Oregon to the Knights, a gift from Oregon to, Phil and Bill, of, where would the University of Oregon be without them? It's hard to think about, especially as we enter a new era of college athletics, of Oregon's in the Big Ten now. We have NIL. We have so many of these other things that have evolved and changed the sport from where Oregon was as, a doormat program in the Pac-10 for a very long time to now is considered one of the nation's blue bloods. And I think that it's cool to see, how one person's idea and inspiration and to the founders, coming together and truly forming one of the most foundational sports companies in the world on campus at the University of Oregon has led Oregon on a rocket ship ride to greatness.
Mm-hmm.
So Zach mentioned, obviously, the 3-year process, and I'm just curious, is that a typical time frame for a new set of uniforms? And can you give a little sense of what that process and flow typically looks like from, initial idea design all the way through a day like today where you actually get to kind of lift the embargo on speaking about a thing that's been in the works for so long?
Yeah, well, I think, I'll start with this. I think one of the things that makes our, Oregon so special is that the players are involved with the dialogue. And so there's Kenny Farr and the whole equipment group. They have a leadership group that are part of the team, and that you're going into the team and having a brainstorm with them. It's like, what are you inspired by? They're all reading Shoe Dog. They're all like, wow, this was really cool. Let's you kind of get this kind of camaraderie and culture related collaboration, and that's really powerful. That's very, very unusual. In all my experiences working with a lot of teams, a lot of colleges, a lot of NFL teams, across the nation, they want that special emotional deep moment and connection, but they don't know how to get there. And it's usually the players that makes the biggest difference at University of Oregon, because it's kind of like, it's not just one person's story, it's the whole team story. And I, back to even like what this launch was with Bryce Boettcher saying what it means to be an Oregonian, and him part of the process to say thank you and to wear this uniform, that's what makes it really, really special. So it always starts with the player. It always starts with that dialogue. And then from there, it just kind of, we snowball, we bring other people, we go back and forth with the players. And then you start to work with, the great team at Nike and their development staff about, hey, we want to do this gold. We want to make it special. And you start to develop all the materials and all the pieces that come together that make a uniform. So that's what takes it so long, is there's some collaboration process and some testing, more dialogue, and then you're like, hey, get Dan Lanning involved, you get Rob Mullins involved, you get the staff involved, and then it just becomes back and forth with the players and the development staff to create the uniform, which is, it takes time.
Yeah, and this was especially one that we really wanted. Like, we knew that we couldn't get it wrong. This was a process that in a uniform that's like, you have to tell this story right. You have to make sure that you're pulling good source material. Obviously, great book, definitely recommend. You have to make sure that you're getting your facts right. You have to make sure that you are pulling inspiration of, this could be fun, but is this meaningful enough? Is this impactful enough that we can be able to include? And so we went through long revision process of, okay, hey, how does this look with, this finish? Okay, maybe we need to make it look more like this. A lot of different ways that we can be able to do it, but I think that it's working back with Oregon, working with the players, that's the secret sauce that makes Oregon, and it's really fun to see how then that generation of players is like, hey, we think this is our touch and our spin on this uniform in a unique way that maybe our previous generation wouldn't do. Mm-hmm. And it's cool to kind of have the uniforms feel like they're the players' fingerprints on an era. And obviously, we talk with the players during the, summer and fall of 2023. So this was a big part of that team's, input and ideas that really led to this uniform being where it is today.
How many times have both of you guys read Shoe Dog? Just curious.
7, 8. It's pretty high. It's pretty high. This isn't our working copy. We have a working copy of the book that is just beat to shreds. Yeah. Just because it's like tab down pages.
I'm a highlighter. I go through and I've read the classic critical quotes, especially from the early time frames, and I'm circling them, highlighting them again and again and again. So there's been multiple readings.
Well, I started reading it again for the second time earlier today, because after, the Dear Phil video, it's like, I love that book. I got to read it again. And so we broke it out earlier.
It's so cool.
It's good.
Well, and I've got to say, too, I'm a classroom teacher, for those who don't know, and the first quote you see when you walk in my room is the quote that starts the book about cowards never start, we die along the way, that leaves us, and we reference that thing constantly in the work we do. So I think it's special to all of us.
Yeah,
it is. It's about the Oregon spirit. Yeah, it's about the Oregon spirit, and that's what we hope. This uniform is a beautiful reflection of that spirit of Oregon.
I want to talk about the details of this uniform because, like I said, there's so many little intricate details and Easter eggs. This is probably an impossible question to answer, so I apologize, but do you have a favorite one in there where you're just like, that's my favorite little detail, I'm so glad we got that in there? Do you have one of those?
Favorite's tough. Favorite's the tough word, but there's so many that stand out. I think that the complements between the duck and the tiger stripes, the duck wings and the tiger stripes, was something that was really unique. Obviously, the first shoe that Phil brought over from Japan of Blue Ribbon Sports was called the Tiger. Mm-hmm. And so we made a huge reference of this was, truly the duck of the West, really becoming the tiger of the East. And being able to have those two things work as parallels on the uniform, even on the pant stripe. One side is the tiger stripes and the other side is the duck wings. Is being able to have those kind of two sides be parallels to each other, we thought was really cool. And then, we had a lot of fun with the symbolism between Mount Hood and Mount Fuji, which obviously Phil grew up in Portland under the guise of Mount Hood. really went to Japan and had Mount Fuji be a really big piece of like wanting to climb it in celebration was a big piece of him. And we actually found out later in the process that the yin yang, the white of the yin represents the heavens and the black of the yang represents the tiger. And so it was this perfect sort of moment where all of these things really blended together into this beautiful storytelling that had this yin yang of these two worlds almost kind of collapsing in on each other. And the way, and obviously the phrase in the middle, Menis Agitat Molem, is from the University of Oregon seal, and in Latin poetry means minds move mountains. And Phil's talked about his crazy idea for starting Nike. And we're like, wow, the mind and the thoughts of Phil Knight literally moved mountains, brought the world closer together. And so we thought that was a really great piece of symbolism for the uniform and, talking about the collaboration process of, this truly innovative and different industry in that way.
So I've got to ask you guys a little about the helmet, because I know you guys may have one there even in front of you. You can possibly talk through a little bit, but just talk about what went into this and just some of the details of the part of it.
Yeah.
Well, if I may,
Go ahead.
Back to your question about some of the Easter eggs and symbolism. You may look at this as just sort of a stripe on the back with the O on top. But I was a military kid, I was an Army brat. So this whole idea that we're honoring Bill Bowerman's, service in the 10th Mountain Division. And if you're not familiar with military, the 10th Mountain Division, those guys were the baddest of the badasses. I mean, they were the toughest. They did crazy things, and I'm reading what they did, belaying down sides of mountains to secure northern Italy, during World War II. I mean, they were the badasses. But this symbolism is related to the captains of the 10th Mountain Division, and that was a symbol of all their troops behind them are following that captain with that stripe into battle. So this is a captain not just giving directions, this is a captain leading in battle. And I just feel like I like that symbolism because I've always felt like that's what Bowerman did with anything that he approaches. He just went forward and everybody followed. And I just feel like I love that part of the symbolism.
And I think we also talked about so much with that stripe of, so many captains' patches are on the front, we're putting ours on the back. And of being able, we want our leaders to lead us into battle. That's how we lead by example. But that is also where University of Oregon sports has been. We are leading the next generation of college sports. We are leading the next generation of athletes. And that's where we really felt like this piece of we're following our leaders into battle is a really impactful piece of the design. And then, of course, you talk about a marble finish on the helmet of, this beautiful, beautiful marble of, looking like it's cut from the original statue of the winged goddess of victory. And being able to have, this is a smaller version, this was a V1 version, so this was the first one ever produced. So we made changes and added more gold speckle and larger the wing, etc. But being able to have the winged goddess of victory wing on one side and the Oregon wing on the other, truly representing, Phil Knight's two loves, the University of Oregon and Nike. And those two sort of symbolisms with the wings we felt was a beautiful metaphor and a beautiful way to represent those two important pieces in that story.
I think what I like so much about the uniforms, and it's impossible to put what you like about the uniforms into, one word or one sentence, but it feels like they're so uniquely for the Oregon diehards. They're for people who have read Shoe Dog. I mean, Oregon is a national brand, obviously. The pictures of the uniforms every week go out on social media, and it's like, oh, Oregon they look so good, they're so cool, but those people who don't know Oregon look at the tiger stripes or the Blue Ribbon Sports logo, and they what is that? I have no idea. But if you know, and it makes so much sense, and it's so meaningful, and you can see how much thought was put into all the little details.
Yeah, and I think that, so many times people looked at Oregon and Nike and the relationship and just kind of wondered why. I think there's a lot of fans, obviously Duck fans know. Duck fans know the impact and power it has of Nike truly started in Eugene. But then I think you look at around the country, they're asking questions. They don't know why is Oregon the flagship school of Nike? Why does Oregon have amazing uniforms and amazing facilities? And I think this is our way to tell that story. And I think it's a way for people to understand. It's like, oh no, this isn't just one person went to this school. This is truly the birthplace of Nike was in Eugene, Oregon. And I think being able to have those pieces is, representative of the Oregon brand. It makes people appreciate Oregon to even a whole nother level.
And I think a lot of people look at Oregon as, I think Dan approached it really positively last year, like, oh, style. We're known for style, not substance. No, we're rooted in substance. And this really shows you, yes, you can have style, but you have deep meaning, deep emotion, deep substance that is part of the university, that's part of what it means to be an Oregonian, and just that power of combining these things together to honor somebody that has made such an impact for us. So, and that relationship, that handshake, I guess, back to the thing, that handshake I described, the handshake heard around the world. That to me this is the handshake of Bill and Phil and athlete and coach, and us as fans with the university and the players, and us as Oregonians. I mean, that's just a powerful trust that you have with where we're headed.
I think that's really important too, because I hope that so many Oregon uniforms go out there, and for a week or so, people say, "Oh, that's so cool. They look so good," but then they kind of, the story dies down. That's why that's one of the reasons we want to do this podcast. We want to elevate this story and make sure the story of this stays alive, because it is so important, and it's really important for people to know this connection and why you guys did what you did, and why Phil did what he did, and why Oregon is who they are. So that's what I think is one of the coolest things about this uniform.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's fun. It's special. And I think that this will be a really cool way for people to dive deeper to understand the Oregon brand. And obviously, this is also a testament to Coach Lanning, of the amazing program that he's building. And seeing, so much of what we talked about was between Phil and Bill. It's the relationship between coach and athlete. It's the handshake. It's the agreement. It's the sign of trust, the brotherhood, the respect, the understanding between those two worlds. And it was really cool. Obviously, Oregon had their deep design video where we showed our presentation that we made to Mr. Knight about the uniform. And it started with Dan and it started with Bryce. And we thought that was so cool. And seeing even their relationship, it's like you and Bowerman. That relationship has never changed. And that's something that'll stand the test of time. And that's something that Dan was super proud of, and I think really wanted to highlight in this uniform was it's about an agreement between coach and athlete. It's about that impact, and it's about that power. And so not only is it for the current athletes, but it's for the future athletes in that same way. So, Dan Lanning's someone to lead the Oregon football program, and somebody that you can trust in that exact same way.
Well, you not only are you a good designer, Quinn, but you teed up my next question.
Yeah, you really did.
Talking about
You
Bryce.
really did. That was perfect.
So, obviously, having Bryce involved, a Eugene kid, went to South Eugene, same high school as Zach and myself. How special was it to have him be a part of that process? And, kind of how much of a slam dunk was it for him to be that athlete, given he represents so much of what this story is about?
Well, it was really cool for us too, because he just got up and he spoke from the heart. He spoke from his experience and growing up, and I love the came here for a t-shirt and a backpack, sort of comment. But that's who he was. He's a very humble guy, and that's what it just felt like. He was like, hey, this is what it means. I'm so proud to be part of this, and it was just really special to have him there. Very well spoken. Such a great kid, such an amazing athlete, and that was just like, oh, you're just embody the spirit of what it means to be an Oregonian and the Oregon spirit. It's like, oh, it just exudes authenticity, which was just so powerful.
Yeah, Bryce was such a big part of the uniform, of obviously the presentation to Phil. So we thought it was so perfect that, him being able to be the model for the uniform when it comes out. And even seeing him in the video talk about the different pieces that we talked about with him was like, man, not only does he know plays and know how to destroy your quarterback, he understands the design details of a uniform and explain it better than I do. So, I think Bryce has not only a baseball career, but a football career, and maybe a design career coming up in the future. So, we were blown away by him, and, he was just such a phenomenal part of this process. So, we're super excited to see everything he does this season, and we'll be super excited just to keep watching.
I was really curious because we knew the uniforms would come out this morning, and I was like, I wonder which athlete they got. I just wonder who the model's going to be. And then when I saw it was Bryce, I was like, Of course. Like, I should have known that from the very get-go. Like,
Because they
it could
used
be
it
no
for
one but him.
Oregon State last year, too. They used it for that uniform as well. So it just makes sense that, Bryce got to be the one to show the uniform.
But you hear him talk about this, and it's a very personal story to him, and that was just so wonderful to have him talk from the heart, say thank you to Phil. Phil got emotional about that. This is from the team to you, Phil, and just what it means to be a kid from Eugene, and it was just like I said, it was just
it felt
like
natural,
honest, truthful, authentic. He was just speaking from the heart.
I want to ask about that meeting because, in your guys' business, you offer your workup each and every week to open up to criticism, whether you like it or not. Largely the reception is almost unanimously positive because people love Oregon uniforms, but you can't please everyone, as you know. I'm curious, what was the experience like actually showing these to Uncle Phil? That had to be a little bit nerve-wracking. I mean, obviously he was going to like them. They're incredible. They're for him. But still, that's got to be, something pretty crazy to actually do in front of him.
There's only one man in the universe that has the power to stop any project just by saying no, and it's Phil Knight. Yeah. So there was always a chance we walk in there and he says no, and the project's over.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there was a lot of nerve wracking through it, but wanted to make sure that he knew about it before we just surprised him on next Saturday. So I think that was really good to be able to do that. But yeah, I think obviously you don't know when someone's giving you something, you don't know how they're going to take it, or if they no, I don't want it. Phil's he's a very humble guy, so he doesn't like the spotlight so much on him. I know that might surprise some people, but he's really not. Don't make this about me. It's not about me. It's about something bigger. And I always still love the humble quote of when he describes himself and Penny is, we're just two kids from Oregon. And so there's a humbleness about it. So for him to say, when you're trying to say thank you to him, you push him into the spotlight probably a little bit more than he wants to be. But it's like, okay, yeah, this is from the heart, from the players to him. Thank you. I think that's where the trepidation came from. But we got a good emotional response, and I think he was very grateful for what we did.
Absolutely. What
we all did.
Mm-hmm.
Can you guys, just kind of pushing out to a little bit of regular uniform talk for just a minute, what goes into the week-to-week uniform process that you guys can share? Are all the game combinations typically decided before the season? I know from your statement earlier there's probably a lot of player involvement in that. And then what happens, if you make a Big Ten title game, you make a Rose Bowl, how does that process work? I know there's probably some things that remain on the down low a bit, but what part of that process can you just share for fans out there?
Yeah, so, this process is really run by Kenny Farr. Easily the best equipment person in the entire world. He does a phenomenal job of being able to orchestrate all of these things for Oregon football. So he has his leadership team that he brings in that is like, hey, we're going to decide on all the uniforms before the season. So we script it out based on, okay, here's what we're going to wear against Montana State. Here's what we're going to wear against Oklahoma State. Here's what we're going to wear against, at Northwestern. All of those things are usually decided in advance before the season because the equipment team needs to make sure they have things on order, they have things organized, what laundry needs to get done this week so we can be able to make sure those uniforms are fresh for next week, etc. And those things, what helmets need to be fixed. Obviously, that's a huge piece of it. Usually coming down and meet with players, you want to do it probably around twice a year, being able to talk to them, get different ideas, understand, what are the different inspiration points for future uniforms and those pieces. But I think that, you always have the right to switch things up a little bit, especially with hey, this game has become a bigger deal than maybe something later in the season. So we should move up this combo because we think this is a better looking combo for this game versus that one. So, you always have little kind of switch arounds just like that, but a lot of it's decided pretty well before the season. Which is good because then you don't have to worry about going through that process.
Yeah. And it's not always just about an aesthetic choice. There is a little bit of science put into it, and think about this in terms of visual acuity. So quarterback, is on a scramble and he has, basically
fractions of a second
to know his player versus the opposing player. So if you are contrasting helmet or contrasting uniform, a little bit of the visual sciences, you can pick up your read faster and know the contrast of them, that you're making a better accurate throw. And there's a little bit of eye science related to that. I don't know if you've seen them a lot of do this kind of thing, those test drills that they do a lot with players and certainly quarterbacks. That's all training your eye to be able to make accurate decisions faster. And there is a little bit of a, hey, we want our contrast, our helmet and certainly our jersey to contrast our opponent more, so we stand out differently in those moments and have a little more contrast, for the quarterback, or for those times where you're just trying to, see opponents differently.
So how does it work once you get into bowl season? Because it used to be that, you had 12 regular season uniforms and then maybe a 13th uniform for a bowl game. Now you could have as many as 15, 16, 17 uniform combinations. Do you have those prepared going into the season? Do you have some that you can pull from? How does that work?
Yeah, so we usually have all of those decided in advance. Usually, so kind of Travis' example, you go to a Big Ten title game, we have a Big Ten home, Big Ten away, that we be able to bring that out. Then, with the CFP process, you have what are 4 home CFP uniforms, what are 4 away CFP uniforms, just so you can be ready for any kind of possible scenario. And then obviously you can kind of flip those around based on opponent. Hey, we think this is going to look better against, Penn State and Texas and, Miami versus, it's maybe not going to look as good against Ohio State or, teams like that. You have kind of the right to switch those around, but, usually you try to go into a season with a scripting book pretty well established, so it's less they have to think about throughout the season. It's kind of like, we're going to decide this in this moment, maybe make a few tweaks along the way, but for the most part, we try to shut the book to be able to focus, so they can focus on football.
So I know Zach mentioned, obviously there's always going to be a few haters out there, and it's never possible to get 100%. With that, I've seen a little bit of chatter out there today. Just, you got your 6-7 Oregon fans who wish we were wearing green and yellow this weekend. So I just want to give you guys, since we talked offline about it, a chance to talk about maybe how the players might feel about that and share a little story about it.
Absolutely. Well, I think one of the fun things with this is, we designed these uniforms for the Oregon athlete. We designed them for the Oregon football program. That's who we really want to make sure that we are satisfying. We want to make sure that they're the ones who are loving the uniforms, who are going to run out into the field and wear them on game day. So that's really kind of where our focus comes of, listening to design feedback and those things. Not everyone can be a rocket scientist, but everyone can be a designer. So of course, people will have their different thoughts and opinions and those pieces. But, we're really trying to stay focused on the Oregon athlete in that way. I think one of the things, obviously, there's a school colors crowd. It makes sense. That's a very real thing that exists. And Oregon has always been one to want to push the bar and do something different. We were really inspired with the black and gold colorway, obviously coming from the Shoe Dog book, that being a really big piece of Nike, and Oregon being the gold standard of the relationship between, Nike and Oregon. But I think that, one of the really fun pieces that we had was we actually presented this uniform to the players right after the Oregon versus Colorado game in 2023 to get some design feedback and make changes and make sure that we're, going to the emotional lengths that they like. And we got a couple players commenting of like, hey, black and gold, that's really unique. We're like, yeah, you guys just beat Colorado. You kick their ass, you take their colors. So, and that's really coming from a player comment from 2005 when Oregon wore black against Oregon State for the first time. And that Fog Bowl game is, Oregon came out in black uniforms and they beat down Oregon State. And it was cool to be able to have that moment where the players are like, yeah, we want to take their colors. That's ours now. So it was kind of fun to, take that to a whole nother level for this sort of uniform set. It's a fun little story throughout the process.
And I think it just shows the mentality of the players too. It's you focus on competition, and you don't worry so much about the traditionalists. Obviously, you do anything right or wrong, and someone's going to say something. But if you're doing it for the right reason, for them, the ones that are on the field and putting their heart and soul and bodies out on the line for it, you're doing it for them. They're loving it, and that's what matters.
I've got another difficult question for you guys to answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Where do these rank among your favorite uniforms? I've talked to you guys before. Quinn, you said your favorites were the Fighting Ducks uniforms in 2011. Todd, you said
those were a favorite. Those were.
You said that Todd, you said the original Natty uniforms in 2009 were Auburn, or the Dornbeckers for obvious reasons. I'm curious, with these now out, and how much time you spent on them. Are these now the top of the list for you?
You want to go first? You go first. You go first.
It's like you said, you're choosing a favorite child, so that's really, really hard. But this is certainly up there.
He chooses my sister every time.
She has a shirt that says favorite child or favorite daughter. But anyway, I think this is just so personal, and I think it's such a wonderful tribute and such an honor for us to be able to say thank you. There's just such meaning and deep-seated, stories behind it and reasons why. And I just think that, this has got to be one of my favorites, because it all comes together, and it just, like I said, there's nothing better than honor the trust and honor the relationship between a coach and an athlete. And I think that this is representative of that.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the best, if not the best. One of my favorites to be able to work on. I think all the deep-rooted storytelling just really makes it impactful. It's kind of like there isn't a top of the mountain, but there's definitely a collection right at there. With this one, Heroes obviously working with the Lanning family last year and Sophia Lanning. That was such an incredibly emotional process. And we still get people reaching out to us talking about, oh my gosh, I wore some of that Heroes uniform when I was going through chemotherapy. And that was something that was like, wow, it's bigger than football. It's bigger than sports. And that was such an incredible uniform, to be able to tell. So that's kind of like the small collection that I would say I kind of put right at that top of the mountain there. But it's really how amazing and how blessed are we that we get to talk about which uniforms do we just love the best. And there's so many just correct options that you can be able to choose from. And I think it's once again a testament to Mr. Knight and the vision that he had for Oregon we're going to be the innovative program, just so long ago, and how that has led Oregon to be in a place they could never dream of themselves being 30, 35 years ago.
I'm curious, how does the result of the game impact your memories of the uniform, if that makes sense? For instance, like the Rose Bowl uniforms last year, some of my favorites of all time. Really I just love the green on top, white on bottom, the helmet, incredible. When I think about those uniforms, though, I think about the results of the Rose Bowl. I'm human. I can't separate those things. Do you guys have that kind of same thing, or are you able to separate these completely and appreciate the design for itself?
Well, what I say is, winning makes everything look better. So, yes, it does feed into your memories of it. Like I still, the Cowboy Classic against LSU, and we had an anthracite uniform with the Volt accents. Probably still one of my aesthetically favorite uniforms. That it puts a seed into your mind of those kind of things and things that you try. But back to this uniform, I think that's what makes this one so special, is regardless of the outcome, it's so personal, meaningful, and there's so many details that go beyond just the aesthetic of how it looked, but to this deeper story and this deeper meaning. And back to what you were saying, is like when it represents something beyond the game, that feels really, really good. We hopefully with all of our hearts want to win on the field, but when it represents something and puts sport in the context of the world and the good that it provides, that's a win as well.
Yeah, we've used kind of the really famous, like the Babe Ruth calling your home run shot a lot as kind of the metaphor with the Oregon brand. Is Oregon is the team to call it shot, take it, and swing for the fences and make a home run. That's what Oregon is about. And I think that it's going to be really cool to see this team continue its successes. And, I think that eventual payoff in the end will be something super memorable and really unique.
We just interviewed Ifo Ekpreolumu last week as part of the Alumni Corner. And Todd, he mentioned that 2011 LSU game was his first college game, and he mentioned that still to his day to today favorite uniforms he'd ever worn. I feel like that's underrated one that doesn't get discussed too often.
Yeah, it's such a shame, because if the BCS would have ranked us number one, we would have worn that against Auburn, in the title game, it would have been even cooler. But just,
Well, we would have worn that one with the Volt socks.
Yes, that is the change.
Because during the LSU game, we didn't wear the Volt socks. We just had the Volt accents.
So the best uniform is one of your favorites was one that was got on the shelf.
Yeah.
Dang. So obviously, when Zach and I reached out about a month ago, we originally had you on to talk about 2.0, which is another big thing you guys are involved in. What's it been like just working on a project like obviously of that scale, and what do you want Ducks fans to know that they should be most excited about or looking forward to when it comes to that?
Gosh, I'll say that I think it's just going to be another stake in the sand for Oregon on facilities, on brand, on just a statement of the program that this thing is big. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be representative of Oregon with glulam beams on the inside and just light and coming of it's just going to be feels like it's part of the Oregon environment, and I think that's to me that just feels like people are going to say yes, it's part of us, and it's world class, and very few, if any, program in the world will have anything like this. Certainly not to the scale as a practice facility. It's going to blow people's minds. And
I think the biggest thing is the purpose and the reason behind the building of maximizing the time and the efficiency for the athlete, of wanting to ever have things be centrally located. You can go from locker room to practice to classroom to recovery to treatment, back to the locker room, going to class, coming back. It's meant to maximize the amount of time that you're spent doing what, being in meeting rooms, the amount that you're learning, the amount that you're training. It's all about, the time spent of the athlete. And I think that's a really cool feature of the building is it's designed with that intent. And, the architecture firm Olsen Kundig has done an amazing job of being able to take really the new kind of modern, sensation of, like, you think what the HTC is, like, gorgeous, beautiful, like the style of it is amazing. And now we're going to have this other building that's going to contrast in Olsen Kundig and their style of, really raw steel, really, beautiful, craftsmanship. That's going to be a really cool piece of the building and how it stands apart, maybe from some different elements, but represents that rooted in substance feel of the Oregon brand. And I think that those are sort of the things that stand out for 2.0 with us is it's going to be an amazing testament to the modern athlete. I think it's going to set Oregon up to be the next leader of athletes for the next 50 years. I think that it's everything that the current Mo gave us. This is going to, quintuple its output. And I think it's going to be incredible to see, more amazing things come out of it.
And if I could add too, I think it will show the continual innovation and progress of the Oregon brand. This building is going to have muscle to it, and I think that's something that a lot of the people don't think that Oregon has. This is going to show it in spades.
Obviously, everything you guys work on is very important. I mean, like we said earlier, it goes out nationwide. People see what you do. They see the product. While the uniforms may be more of a snapshot of time, I think 2.0 is, it's like you said, a stake in the ground. It's there to stay. It's pretty permanent. What is the type of pressure that comes with like helping design something that is so permanent and is so much bigger on a larger scale than just, I say just some uniforms. Like I'm not obsessed with the uniforms, but you know what I'm saying.
I would say, from my standpoint, I'm actually shocked by how similar it is, how similar the process is that, it's storytelling. It's deeply rooted, meaning. It's being able to say, hey, how can we make a subtle nod to this? Or, hey, this is a big piece that Coach Lanning talked about of being a big part for his program. How can we embed that philosophy within this facility? And those are the same ways that we talk about and interact with uniforms. I think that I've actually been, for my process, you've designed how many buildings? This is my first one that I'm really getting involved with, is how similar the process is and how it's just about highlighting what's important. It's about saying these are our DNA traits. The same way you take DNA traits for a uniform, we're going to make DNA traits for this building, and this is how we're going to represent it on so many different sizes and scales.
Yeah, so I think back to your question, it does still start with the story. It starts with really what you want to project and what you want to highlight and where's the Oregon brand going. So it starts with that sort of DNA of the story. Just like a uniform, that story can go, like what we're just talking about, into the Shoe Ducks uniform, or it can go into the 2 Mo building. And it's just like, yeah, there may be a permanence thing to that that's a little longer, but the DNA traits and everything else is relatively the same.
I was joking with my friend the other day. We both live up in Portland, so we don't fly into Eugene often. But we were both saying, once this thing's built, we've got to book a flight from California and fly into Eugene just to get the top view at night. That seems to be the place
the O
to be.
from space.
Yeah,
the O from space.
yeah. We were hoping to be a little farther along. The blimp last weekend flying over would have been a nice shot.
It'll just have to come back in a couple of years.
Yeah.
Come back in a couple of years.
Is 2027 still the projected date? I haven't seen any updates on that. Just curious.
That is the target.
It's on the temporary signage around the HDC 2027.
Yep.
Love it.
Future of football.
Travis, you got anything else before we get out of here with these guys?
No, just like super grateful to y'all. I mean, I can speak for my 17 Ducks group chats today that are going all hours of the day, that everyone I talk to is just so fired up and impressed. And the only downside I can say is I think you drained a lot of our credit cards on the Nike app, unfortunately, this morning. I know Zach's in the same boat as me, so we'll forgive you for that, and just grateful to you guys for all the hard work.
Well, we appreciate it. It's an honor to be able to chat with you guys today, so good luck with everything going forward. But, yeah, we're happy to be here.
We're excited about the future. It's super fun to be such an exciting time to be an Oregon Duck. It's super fun, and we're super excited to be a part of this, and really happy to be on the podcast and love being a part of Ducks Rising.
Yeah, thank you. I think I speak for all Oregon fans when I say I can't wait to see what you guys do next. I really do. Thank you guys for coming on. I appreciate it.
Of course. Right. Thank you guys so much.
Appreciate it, guys.
Go Ducks.